Hello everyone. Today's game is between Ivan Ivanisevic with the white pieces who was rated 2577 at the time and with the black pieces Dragoljub-Jacimovic who was rated 2438 with the black pieces. For those of you who do not know Ivanisevic, he's a dangerous attacking player in the style of Tal and Velimiric and players of that ilk. So if you like attacking players, Ivan Ivanisevic is a player uh, whose games you should check out when you get a chance. So he plays d4, and Jacimovic plays e6. So of course there's transpositional opportunities here for both players. White can just play e4 here, and then after uh, d5 you would just have a French defense. Alright, so that's playing the C. Also, you can even go for your Owens defense if you feel enterprising. So after e4, after e6, c4 is played, and this is what most people play. If you're a d4 player, usually you want to kind of stay in familiar territory, so you play c4. And of course, even from here, there's many more transpositions. There's knight f6, right? Offering your Nimzo Queen Indian complex. Of course, d5, just Queen's Gambit decline. And the Dutch, which was played in the game, and e6 is historically a safe way to get into the Dutch defense, while at the same time avoiding the myriad of anti-Dutch systems that occur after the immediate 1f4. So for example, after after 1f5, after d4 f5, then you have, of course, your Staunton Gambits of the world. You have g4. I don't remember what this is called, but bishop g5, h3, followed by g4, even queen d3. Uh, Knight c3. There are many anti-Dutch systems. So many players who like to play the Dutch, they try to sidestep many of them, and they'll play e6, and they're willing to go into a French defense. And I believe this is a recommendation of Botvinnik, who also played the French defense and the Dutch defense. c4 and f5. And by the way, the last time the Dutch defense was seen in the World Championship match is the 1951 match between David Bronstein and Mikhail Botvinnik. So there are a bunch of classical Dutch defense games in that match. So if you're interested, go check that out for some high level games in the Dutch defense. So knight c3 is played, bishop b4, putting pressure on the e4 square, of course. This is all related. Nimzo Indian complexes where the bishop pins the knight, and also the bishop is willing to trade itself to keep this stranglehold on e4. Alexander Alekhine also mentioned in his greatest games about the classical Dutch, and he advocated trading this bishop off early, saying that it's in the classical Dutch it's not really useful at all, and so he recommended just quickly trading it for this knight. So we kind of see a similar idea here with this early pin. Now e4 is played by Ivanisevic, and as you can see, the pawn is not really protected. But as I told you, he has a very aggressive style, so he chooses to play a gambit here. He plays e4, f takes e4, and now he plays f3. Okay, so uh, what can we say about this? It's a very bold move Okay, but we can't say that black is up material, but white has the type of position that he wants. So uh, that's his psychological compensation. If we can, be nice about it. All right. Now, instead of taking, black just prefers to give back the pawn, which is a recommended solution. Of course, e takes f3, knight takes f3 can be played, knight f6, bishop d3, and we have white seeking compensation for his pawn deficit. And white has some chances to develop something out of here. He has a good activity as pieces, two open files, and a space advantage. Another idea is just developing for black though, at knight just with knight f6, and say after f takes e4, knight takes e4, queen g4, attacking the knight. Knight takes a3, bishop a5, bishop d2, castles, bishop b takes c3 and d6. It's black is has consolidated here. It's hard to see what white has. All right. So instead of knight f6 or f takes e takes f3, knight c6 was played, and that provoked d5, and the knight hopped in the center. So now f4, so this gets rid of the knight, but it leaves the e4 pawn standing for the moment at least. Knight to g6, knight ge2, knight f6. So black is just moseying along, completing its development, and white doesn't seem too concerned about this pawn deficit for now. a3, and now black just gets rid of the knight. Alekhine would be proud, but it's replaced by another knight. Now, if black had the opportunity to double pawns here, um, I wouldn't question this move, but maybe he could have retreated the bishop, perhaps, maybe to d6 or e7. But I don't think this move is bad in itself. It's just that he just gives up the bishop here for nothing but time here. But after all, he is up a pawn, and now he can just continue on with his development. And now he has a slight lead in development. So bishop e2, e takes d5 now. And this is important because the space advantage in the center is, annoying for white. Excuse me, annoying for black, and kind of restricts his development or something. So this exchange, e takes d5, is kind of necessary. So, for instance, like d6, castles, say knight e7, putting more pressure. g4, e takes, and c takes d5. Again, white has this annoying, cramp of the d5 pawn, really restricting black's pieces here. So he starts to attack white's main advantage, which is this space advantage in the center. C takes d5, and now he plays d6 castles, and now c6. Sorry, c6, continuing to break down this space advantage. King h1, knight e7. All right, so black is basically improving his pieces, continuing to put pressure on the center, and I think white realizes here that he needs to do something, that he really doesn't have adequate compensation for the pawn deficit, that at this point he's kind of just a pawn down. This is the explanation for this next move. So basically, white decides to burn his bridges with g4. So he's giving up a second pawn now. And the reason is because he's down one pawn, and if he plays in any type of normal earthly fashion, then he'll just lose. So he goes for broke here. So, for example, instead of g4, if he just took d takes c6, b takes c6, of course, black takes over the center, b4 and d5. Okay, black is better in that instance. So he plays g4, so he's just going for it. Knight takes d5, and now f5. Why f5? Because it plays against this bishop right here. Okay, restricts this bishop, and of course that affects this rook in the corner. All right. Furthermore, there's threats later on to um, push on the king side. Black is still in the driver's seat here, but at least white is creating um, problems in the position. Right? He's not making it just a simple, clear path for black to take and win the game. He's creating problems, and that's like the main lesson in this game is that, especially in human chess, okay, like engines would just win the game for black every time here, but in human chess, there's psychological factors that sometimes, all right, and that's where that old adage comes about playing the person and not the board, right? In this age of engines and computer analysis, we tend to lean on the side of always looking for the best move in the position, right? Everything has to be based on concrete analysis and calculation, right? So I think the art of bluffing the opponent, right? The art of making moves that might not be the best moves, but have a shocking effect on your opponent psychologically. I think these are the type of things that masters like Tal and Kasparov were absolutely, and Lasker also, absolutely fantastic at, is creating situations that would create stress in the opponent and worry. All right. So here, black is probably on the verge of being busted, right? But I'm sorry, white is on the verge of being busted, but white is creating enough drama in the position for black to have to be nervous about. And sometimes the pressure, the psychological strain can cause a player to go wrong. Another player I would like to mention in that light is Adolf Anderson, an old player from the 1800s. If you study Anderson's games, and I don't expect people to go out and study Adolf Anderson's games, but I've studied a lot of his games, about 60 of them, in detail. And what I noticed about Adolf Anderson was that in many of the games that he won, he was totally busted in those positions. And what he used to do is he would be so active with his pieces that even though he was lost in a lot of these positions, he forced the opponent to have to play accurately for 5 to 10 moves in a row. So the opponent would be, making precise moves, winning, and then the opponent would make one mistake, and then I would turn the evaluation around, and Anderson would win with the, combination or something like that. Now you might say, yeah, that's chess in the 1800s, but the principles still apply. It's sometimes, yes, according to the engine, your position might be worse. However, there is chances over the board that you have to take into account. Just because of the frailty of human psyche, human physicality, etc. Right? So you might go in a position where you might be a pawn down or 2 pawns down, right? But the position is very sharp. Your opponent has to play accurate for 10 moves. What's the odds of the opponent doing that, right? So, and you know that if he makes one slip, the whole evaluation is going to turn, and you're either going to be equal or better. That's worth taking that risk. So, with that said, let's continue. Knight takes c3, bishop, b takes c3, and now knight d5. Um, that move there's a threat here, of course, of knight takes c3, but to me, natural is just d5, right? Connect the pawn chain. It looks good. It makes you feel good, right? Say B3 and then just B6 and take care of this bishop right here, right? Black is nice solid position, 2 extra pawns. Um, so I don't know why why overlook this move. Instead, I guess he's trying to punish white here. Who knows? But he makes this thread here, and now Ivanisevic plays bishop c4, just simply pinning the knight to the king here, and now king h8. All right, so now we see black, being a little passive all of a sudden. All right, and now this allows white to double the pawns. Now instead of king h8, maybe a move like queen a5, at least preventing that situation. Let's see. Right, you still have some pressure here. A rook e1, and now king h8. Takes. And now with this, the quality of the pawns diminished here, white will probably draw that game anyway. With the opposite bishops in the double pawns. After king h8, which is a little bit less active, bishop takes, c takes. And now, here's another lesson that we could take from the game is now you have bishops of opposite color on the boards. All right. Now, in the middle game, bishops with opposite colors favors the attacking player. Why is that? Because the opposite colored bishops can't neutralize each other. All right, so that favors the attacking player. If a player can generate an initiative and has opposite color bishops, it's almost like having an extra piece, if you think about it in that way. Because the light square bishop can't do anything to stop the dark square bishop. So if you're attacking, it's almost having like an extra piece on the board and your opponent can't do anything about it. So bishop e3. And as you can see, there's no counterpart to the dark square bishop of that white has. Okay, another lesson here is notice how white focuses on attack. He doesn't just grab this pawn. All right. There's no the material is not important here. And of course, bishop d7 with this idea coming up. Okay. The initiative is important. So bishop e3, bishop d7, and now rook f4, rook c8, and now bishop d4. Again, the attacking player has this dark square bishop. The light square bishop can't do anything to neutralize this bishop. So that's why opposite color bishops favor the attacking player. All right. Queen g5, trying to defend his somewhat compromised king side. Queen d2, and now in the bid to try to get this bishop in the game, bishop b5 is played. I like also this move, rook f7, because black definitely has to concentrate on defensive possibilities here. Rook f7 kind of fortifies the this g pawn a bit, especially with this bishop here on d5. But bishop b5 is understandable. It gets a piece into the game that was out of the game. Rook b1, natural move, attacking the bishop. Bishop a6. Queen e3. Here's another theme I always talk about in my other videos, especially dealing with pawns. Notice how the black pawns are fixed. So he has a pawn preponderance in the center, but they're fixed. And once they become fixed, they're now liabilities and targets. And this is exactly what you have here. So this is like a bad pawn center for black. All right, and black is trying to do the same thing to white with his kingside pawns. Notice the queen is blockading the G pawn, and if he can keep those pawns immobilized, then those pawns will become targets also and be liabilities for white. So let's see how that works out for both sides. So rook c8, rook b2, b6, and now h4. Notice how black's pawns are immobile in the center, but white finds a way to keep his pawns moving. Queen h6, and the queen is a terrible blockader, by the way. And the problem with taking on h4 is that it exposes the queen here, and that was the purpose of bringing the rook to the second rank. And then queen h3 would close out the show. So h4 and then queen h6. So white continues to build his attack. So now rook bf2. Black plays rook e5, blocking off the influence of the bishop on his diagonal. g5, queen h5, and f6. So we see the mobile pawns, right, of white. Very dangerous. And now he plays g takes f6. Wow. g6 seems more natural to me, right? Keeping things closed. Remember, remember always talking about fixing the pawns. If you can fix them, they become liabilities. So g6 is like a step in that direction. So let's say, for example, g6, and then after f7, with this idea of rook coming to f6, attacking this pawn. After h6, which allows the king to go here, right? Get off of this ugly diagonal. Rook f6, h7. Take the exchange finally. D takes queen g3. And now we see the center finally start rolling for black. So that's like a double-edged position. But again, it illustrates the point I'm making between mobile pawns and immobile pawns. So in this variation, you see white's pawns kind of get bogged down here. And once they get bogged down, then they can be attacked. And then you see, conversely, how black's pawns have become mobile in the center. And then they become very dangerous. Okay? So this is like, gives black a little more chances here after playing g6. Because that's in the spirit of how you should be dealing with pawn advances. You try to block them and destroy them. So here what happens is after g takes f6, so the pawns are still moving, and now you have files open. And as you can see by the arrows, the queen and rook wanted to come to the g file here. So, of course, the natural response is to play this move, rook g8, to try to preempt any occupation of the file here. Rook f7, again with the same idea of blocking the pawn is possible. And then if queen g3, then black is still in hot water because of the penetration to the back rank. So rook e8 is a beautiful combination here to queen g7. And again, you see this motif of the unopposed bishop in the middle game, and you can see it's illustrated right here why opposite color bishops favor the attacker in middle game. And of course, this leads to mate. Another defense is bishop c8. Okay, so the bishop was on a open diagonal, but the diagonal was kind of useless. So maybe bringing the bishop back um, is good. Then let's say after rook d2, queen d1, and you can see here black, has some kind of resources at least, and then maybe you can try to trade queens here. So this is probably the best way to go. But he played rook g8 here, natural looking move, but it allows the shot f7. Remember, I keep saying this throughout the video. Mobile pawns, mobile, however you want to say it. The pawns are moving, and when the pawns are moving, that is usually dangerous. Moving supported pawns are very dangerous. Of course, the bishop is supreme here. Pawn on f7. This forces the rook back, in an embarrassing way. And now queen g3 with the threat of rook g2. Black finally gets to mobilize his pawns, but it's too late because white has the threat of queen g7 mate. And after queen g6, black just resigned because after queen g6, just simply rook g4, and there's going to be mate on the board soon. Even with the heavy loss of material, so black's queen will meet an ignominious ending. So Jacimovic decided to give the game up right there. So that was a very exciting game, strong attacking game, exciting game. And usually when players take risk, such as Ivanisevic did in the opening, just to recap with this gambit right here, it makes for a very exciting game, creating the imbalances on the board. So again, just to recap and summarize real quick, sometimes, especially in human chess, don't underestimate the value of psychological play against your opponent, inducing stress and fatigue, and basically playing the person and not the board. If you notice that your opponent is like nervous, or maybe he's low on the clock or fidgety, things like that, don't be afraid to take risk. Everything doesn't have to be perfect according to the computer analysis. Another important point: opposite color bishops favor the attacking player in the middle game for the points illustrated during the game. Point number 3, pawn mobility. It doesn't matter how many pawns you have in the center or the king side or whatever have you. The most important thing is that those pawns are alive and mobile. Okay, once those pawns get blocked and fixed, okay, they can become targets and liabilities if your opponent grabs the initiative. All right, so I showed you several variations where the pawns were fixed and what that looks like, and when they were able to move, what that looks like. So always be on lookout for the mobility of the pawns. Fourth point, but minor point: queen is a terrible blockader. So if you see a position where the opponent has a queen or a rook blockading pawns, you should be licking your chops right there, because that piece is gonna have to move. And you saw the brilliant move h4 after the maneuver rook b2 by white, and after h4 the queen had to move to more inferior square, so the queen couldn't hold the blockade, all right, because of tactical implications. All right, fifth point: even when you're in a stressful situation, okay, sometimes there are defensive resources. So we saw in the end that even with the pressure that black was under, bishop c8 was a possibility to save the game, moving the bishop from useless diagonal to an open diagonal, useless diagonal to a useful diagonal. So that brings me to point number 6, is that even though your pieces are on open files, okay, just being on an open file doesn't necessarily make the piece a practical and useful piece, especially if the battle is somewhere else on the board. So that is important. Make sure that your pieces are on open files and such, but make sure that they're affecting the outcome of the game. All right, it doesn't matter if you have a rook on the A file or something like that, and all the important part of the battle is on the king side, or you getting checkmated on the other side of the board. So make sure that your pieces, they're just not on random open files and open diagonals, but useful open files and diagonals. All right, and I think that's pretty much it. Just don't be afraid to play gambits against your opponent. Don't be afraid to be down material. Okay, and also understand too that there's a difference between dynamic play and static play, and know when you have to engage in dynamic play. If you're down in material, things like that, um, you have to create compensation in the form of activity over the board. Okay, notice how Ivanisevic wasn't in the rush to restore material equality and just capture the e pawn back right away. Okay, and I'm talking about namely this position where he had the chance to just grab the pawn. Yes, right here. Instead of queen takes d5, which would have been dubious, he just kept developing. Bishop e3. Okay, an engine might grab this pawn. But again, we're talking about something different. We're talking about practical human chess. All right, he just kept developing. All right, so when you're playing in a dynamic fashion, you look for these type of opportunities. Okay, on the board. So that's it for my preaching and sermon for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please check my links down below. Please donate to my channel. I could really use the support. Um, Also, there's links down below which will be related to the opening DVDs and or books. So today, what opening we had? The Dutch Defense. So there'll be DVDs and or links concerning the Dutch defense in all variations, whether it's Leningrad, Stonewall, Classical, etc. So with that, I hope you enjoy. Comment down below, and I will see you on the next video.